Okay, I just finished All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it was very impactful. It was a learning experience. It was sort of like, a peek into the mind of somebody that is offering a lot of insights on a lot of taboos in society. And I think that Gilbert sort of holds a space for me that is very much one foot in the secular world and one foot in the, spiritual world, not to say religious, because again, I think that she's very open and comfortable with a lot of things that maybe religious and spiritual people are not. So you actually get a lot of very interesting sort of information and experiences that maybe other people are not, willing to share because of how it will make them look or be perceived. And so, first and foremost, I think it's just like a very brave and courageous book. And I would say I had two really big question marks going in. And so I want to say those first and foremost, because I didn't just run in being obsessed with her because I like Deep Pray Love and Big Magic. I was very trepidatious, mainly because I heard in some, at some point in some sort of content that there was that part that she contemplates taking the life of her lover as she's terminally ill. And that felt very jarring and uncomfortable just hearing it out of context, which of course that's life. And it did change my mind. I changed my mind as I read the book, and I'll talk about that. And the other thing was making a story very much about a real person that is no longer here to sort of offer, insight on the other side of it. And, I feel like when I heard about it and when I read about it, it was Rayya, 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 Rayya. And that is the book. It is, except for maybe the last, 15% of it. But, I was uncomfortable because I was like, if I were her, if I were Rayya's family, it's would I be what are you doing? Why are you sort of taking, her life and making it sort of your story? But I think what the book does an amazing job at is sort of illustrating codependence and love addiction. And I think that she was very right in framing the book that way, not only because it's about love and loss, which is all, Rayya, but also, she sort of the book is almost like a codependent relationship, because it's you're reading it, you're getting the warm and fuzzies, then you get the really poignant, difficult parts about, the illness, and then you sort of end up with Gilbert on her own again. And the end of the book, when she's doing the 12 steps for her love addiction and all that, and Rayya's already passed, it is the most boring part of the book. And she even says her life becomes more boring. But that to me is a testament to how well she sort of presents codependency and love addiction, that from her point of view, this much of the book is literally all about Rayya. You know what I mean? And but so I appreciate that, because as a mechanism for sort of sharing her story, where she is literally saying that she gets lost in her love for other people and puts her self-worth in other people, she did an excellent job in portraying that in this book, which is why I sort of understood why it was Rayya, 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 Rayya. And Rayya's a larger than life character, charismatic. There's always those people in life that it's whatever decision they make, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, there are people that are just naturally charismatic and interesting and fascinating. And so, one of the interesting things is, knowing that they were just friends and she really fell in love with Rayya once Rayya was diagnosed. That's something that Carol Radziwill says, that she got married, to her husband after he already was diagnosed. But I think particularly, this one being very clearly a terminal illness, it does make it very romantic, very carpe diem, very I have to pronounce my love for you. But it's also, again, I feel she acknowledges that a lot of that was sort of her codependency and stuff like that. And so, not to take away from their love for each other, but again, that act I felt was whoa, dude, how do you, how do you take that's happening to somebody and then sort of insert this crazy love affair? But at the same time, from Rayya's perspective, I'm sure at the end of her life, you know what I mean, even though there was some really bad parts, that probably was, and I think she does acknowledge, because she does sort of talk to a medium at the end, and I believe that is sort of acknowledged, that it was a really lovely gift, and it did really bond their souls forever. So, like it's very layered in terms of, what's codependency, what's true love. And that exploration, I think I got a lot out of, because I also question what's like, being just way too romantic and whimsical, and what's like real true love. And I think she portrays both. And I think that, with the regard to like wanting to like, take Rayya's life, I really do think that when you read it in context, this is actually a caregiver that was really just suffering mentally. And so, even though she obviously didn't follow through on that, I do think it's really good that she shared that, because that is something that, quite frankly, just makes her look really bad and could be used against her from anybody that's an enemy of hers, particularly people that don't, probably, I don't know, whatever, agree with her life, I don't know. But, so I think that was, again, very brave, and I think that it was necessary to sort of illustrate the rock bottom point that she suffered while Rayya fell back into her addiction while being sick, which, again, that part was also crazy for me. Not just like somebody doing drugs, but somebody doing that at the point that they're already sort of like on medications and things to try and save their life. Like the cognitive dissonance, which she talks about a lot, that for me took a lot to just be like, that I don't understand. And I have seen people behave like that, where it's like you have something serious going on and you're sort of doing things that even a normal healthy person maybe wouldn't do. So that was very interesting, I would say, just in general about human nature. But overall, I just think that this almost like reads kind of like a novel, but I'm glad she didn't write it as a novel, because her words, I love that she references, like particularly where she sort of had her enlightenment in Eat, Pray, Love, and how she still went back into patterns when life became more normal, because that is so true. Like I have been in sort of instances where I feel like, sort of this spiritual renewal and all of these things. But if your environment sort of brings other factors into your life, it's very easy to fall back into other patterns. So it is a lifelong sort of journey to sort of like maintain, your spiritual life and renewal and all of those things. So I just love that since it wasn't a novel, she was able to just be like, this is where I was when you read Eat, Pray, Love. This is where I'm at now. This is why I'm not talking about this guy. This is why I'm talking about her. All of those things I really, really appreciate. It feels like it's such an intimate book, and I would definitely recommend it. I think that it's just so unique, beautiful cover, but just in terms of subject matter and perspective alone, I feel like this is worthy of a read, because she really does bring you not through Rayya's journey, but through her journey with Rayya and after Rayya, and what that relationship really taught her about herself. If this book had ended right when Rayya died, I would not have liked it, even though I found the last part a little bit more boring. Just because if she had ended it right when Rayya died, it would have been completely codependent and completely like leaning into that romanticism, whereas the reality of it was that she spent the next 5 years really detoxing from love, addiction, and all of that stuff. And I think that really fulfilled the arc, where it's like she was doing all of that where she lived sort of like in New York City or New Jersey or wherever she was, not sort of like in an ashram and not like eating pasta in Italy, like in herself. And I think that that's sort of, it is a foil to Eat, Pray, Love, to the extent that Eat, Pray, Love, I think, was more about the world, and then this was more about the world inside her, that I think Rayya sort of like unlocked, and just like meeting her at the river at the end of her life, I think is a very beautiful sort of like metaphor for, a book that brings up a lot of really challenging things about life. So, again, just, I don't know, I would read it.